A young man from Queens transforms a modest penny stock operation into a $200 million empire of fraud, excess, and corruption. Jordan Ross Belfort wasn't born into wealth. Growing up in the Bronx and later Queens, he was the son of an accountant and a homemaker. His first taste of sales came early, selling ice cream on the beach at 13, where he quickly learned the art of persuasion. But it was his door-to-door meat and seafood sales business in the 1980s that first revealed his natural talent for selling anything to anyone. When that business failed, leaving him $25,000 in debt, Belfort found himself at a crossroads. A family friend suggested he try Wall Street. It'd be new recruits, many of them young men from working-class backgrounds with no Wall Street experience, were promised they could make millions. Sales philosophy. Belfort developed what he called the straight-line method of selling. Every conversation had one goal: move the prospect from initial interest to buying decision in the shortest possible time. He would later teach his brokers that there were only two emotions that mattered in sales: greed and fear, and that made it into the film. As money poured in, so did the excess. Belfort owned multiple homes, including a $4 million Long Island estate, and due to his cooperation. He was also ordered to pay $110 million in restitution to the investors he had defrauded, a debt that remains largely unpaid to this day. Upon his release in 2006, Belfort faced the challenge of rebuilding his life with virtually nothing. The government had seized most of his assets, and he owed millions to his victims. He moved to California and began working on his memoir, Scorsese's film. The book deal and subsequent movie rights provided some income, but nowhere near enough to satisfy his restitution obligations. This has become a source of ongoing controversy. While Belfort travels the world giving motivational speeches and selling his sales training programs, federal prosecutors continue to monitor his income to ensure victim payments are. Human cost was devastating. Thousands lost life savings. Elderly retirees saw nest eggs evaporate. Young families lost money saved for children's education. Many victims never recovered financially. Despite restitution orders, they've received only fractions of losses. Critics argue Belfort's celebrity status rewards and punishes criminal behavior. Now in his 60s, Belfort remains controversial. His motivational speaking commands tens of thousands per appearance. He teaches sales techniques to businesses, though critics say he's profiting from the same manipulative tactics used to defraud investors. The movie portrayed him as a charismatic anti-hero whose problem was excess. Reality is darker, unchecked. Ordinary people's vulnerability to manipulation, and white-collar crimes' lasting consequences. Jordan Belfort may have served his time and reinvented himself as a motivational speaker, but victims still wait for justice. His story reminds us that behind every glamorous Hollywood crime portrayal, real people's lives were shattered by those choosing greed over conscience.